Welcome to the RealTrending podcast, where we speak to the brightest minds in real estate about leadership, business growth, trends, and strategy. I'm your host, Tracey Velt, Senior Director of Data and Content for HousingWire and RealTrends. So today, I'd like to welcome Jose Medina, Team Leader at Jose Medina and Associates, Keller Williams Legacy Group Realty, and powered by Impact. They're located in Ohio. He and partner Rich Cosgrove were named to the 2021 RealTrends GameChangers with 435% growth in transaction side percentage between 2016 and 2020. And I'm sure a lot has changed since then. So welcome, Jose.
Yeah, it's great to connect, Tracy. Just to bring you up to speed on where we're at. Currently, we're running 3 different brokerages. We have, between the 3 brokerages, we have about 700 agents there. Last year, we closed 7,200 transactions for just over 1.6 billion in volume. And then on top of that, I also run a sales team. Last year, we did about 900 transactions, and that was about 202 million in volume. So, outside of that, we also started in 2021. I decided I just didn't have enough to do, And so in 2021, we started Powered by Impact, which is, we're just an organization that we partner with real estate brokerages across the United States so they can build out their own teamerage division. So we offer basically a simple solution to brokerages so they can have a teamerage division inside of their normal brokerage. And we're able to get them up and running within 45 days. So right now, as we sit, we're at 16 different locations across the United States.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit, because obviously there's a difference in what is considered a teamerage and what is considered a team. And so explain the difference, and then explain how you're different than maybe like the Livian model that Keller Williams also uses.
Yeah. So, so the team, the brokerage, the teamerage conversation, Tracy, as you know, probably better than anybody, it's a very, I'd say, messy field where there's just a lot of overlaps, a lot of different models. And really there's a lot of different models that are working at a high level. So when we went down this road, and started talking about teamerage, I think the first thing that we need to do to make sure we're all on the same page and clear up anything is the proper way to spell teamerage. I've seen it probably 3 or 4 different ways. I'm sure you have as well. So the way we have always used it is Teamerage. To me, I feel like that's the proper way. I've seen a B in there. I've seen other versions, but so basically, what we do is we go in and we partner with brokers to bring in the leads, the transaction coordination, the listing service, the coaching, all of those tools into a traditional brokerage where they do not have those. And we're going to talk about profitability, I'm sure, and the difference between teams and brokerages, but we're just seeing a really big shift in brokerages, and we're seeing a really big downward pressure in real estate brokerage services and what agents are willing to pay. And that's why the need for teamerage is so important right now.
Okay. And so I just want to clarify. So a team is, under a brokerage, whereas teamerage is the brokerage, but all of the agents in that brokerage are reporting, all of the sales are recorded under the team leader. Correct.
So it depends on the model.
Right.
And so what I would say is, so when you look at, there's so many different models out there. And I think let's start with just the brokerage kind of baseline. Brokerage baseline is really twofold, which in my opinion would be compliance and commissions, right? Like those are the 2 bare necessities that kind of do a brokerage. And then when you look at team, there's all different kinds of models and varieties out there. And I think when we look at teamerage, what we're looking at is a brokerage that's getting into the space that is going to be providing leads. They're going to be providing marketing for agents and so forth. So I think the big difference, at least with our model, is you made the point of everything's recorded under one agent. With our teamerage model, the individual agent that's on a teamerage is getting their own production and their own identity, which is a very big difference than a team, right? And so I think that that's one of the big reasons why we're seeing so much desire and like people want to approach this, because they're realizing that these team members, if you will, want their own identity, want their own marketing, and want their own recognition. And yet they still need the services of a regular team. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And then explain to me like the difference, like the value proposition difference in between what you're offering and Livian and some of the other different platforms for teams out there.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm not super familiar with what they do, but what I can tell you is with what we do is, so when we go in, we partner with what we would call as a director of sales. That's someone that's currently already in their brokerage. And we find someone that has the ability to lead and hold people accountable and be attractive to the model. And so we then come around them and help them recruit. So we do a lot of recruitment for our teamerages. We just launched one in Charlotte, and we launched with 9 agents already. And we're every day we're doing interviews, and we're taking people through a process to make sure that they're the right fit. So on top of actually like bringing them into the brokerage, which is a huge benefit to the brokerage that we're in, we're also then giving them coaching. So they're getting into production. It's high level coaching. We're also giving them leads. So we have several different lead generation sources that we're giving. We're also then diving into marketing for them. So each agent that's going to be on that teamerage should have their own branding and their own identity. And so we're doing all of that for them, as well as keeping all the financials for that teamerage. And then on top of that, the brokerage is benefiting financially by us being there because they're getting a percentage of the profit split.
You know, the lead generation is a core component of what I think a teamerage is, like you said. And RealTrends did a team profitability study, and we looked at the profitability of teams compared to brokerages. I think we looked at 2,000 different teams. These are not necessarily all teamerages, but they were included in that. And the average gross margin for brokers is 13.8%. That's across all models. We're including all models, and that obviously that changes based on model. But for teams, it was 60.3%. And what we found, I mean, that's a huge difference, obviously. You know, everybody kind of knew teams were probably more profitable than brokerages, but that kind of hits it home. So, but what we found too is much of that has to do with the power of the team lead generation, that a lot of brokers aren't generating leads for their agents or teams. So what are your thoughts on this? And, you know, are there any other reasons you think teams are more profitable than brokerages?
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting to hear. They're literally 4 to 5 times more profitable. That's as a percentage of GCI, obviously. But I think that's a very interesting stat. And I don't think it's really surprising probably to anybody listening. And I think whoever finds the client is the key, and whoever finds the client is going to be the one that controls the industry, right? And so I think what we've seen over the years is, I remember back, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I remember going back to my original brokerage, which was a local brokerage that, I would sit at the office desk and take in office phone calls. I would get a listing, and they would take the pictures, they would put the sign up, they would do all the marketing, they would provide leads. Like, really, if you kind of rewind, that was a team back then before it was cool to have a team, right? And so what we've seen just over time is just that downward pressure on commission. And so what we've seen is brokerages having to like peel off, basically. They basically have to peel off leads, like we talked about. They have to peel off the leverage, like listing coordination, marketing for agents. I mean, some models have even peeled off office space, right? Or in the technology. So all of those lead to obviously a smaller margin, right? And I think it's also interesting because I think you can get in the conversation of percentage of profit, and the teams can be really attractive. I also think there's some downsides when you look at team versus brokerage. I'm sure our friend Steve Murray would probably be able to say that the selling, when you go to sell it, I'm sure the valuation's quite a bit different when you're in a broker and you're probably less attached to the business versus a team where everything's about that person that's trying to sell it, right? So there's that. And I also think there's a dollar per hour concept that we need to talk about to kind of put everything on level playing fields. Like my team that has 25 agents was more profitable than one of my brokerages that has 230 agents. But I spend a lot more time and energy on the team than what I do on the brokerage, right? And so like, yes, they make 4 to 5 times more off of the GCI, but at the same time, there's other trade-offs as well.
Yeah, and definitely brokerage spending on marketing and advertising has decreased substantially. We do brokerage benchmarking through RTC Consulting and Steve Murray, and that's one of the, I don't remember the exact percentage, but it has dropped a ton from 2016, I believe is the last one I looked at. So it is definitely something brokers are peeling off, like you said. So why do you feel like more brokerages don't run as team, kind of a teamerage?
That's a great question, right? Like if you're listening to this, like why wouldn't you do a concept closer to a team than a brokerage? And I think when I think about it, there's one, especially right now, I think the main word that I'm hearing through talking with agents and reading the news is I think that there's a lot of fear in the market. There's just a lot of uncertainty with the economy, with what's going on with the housing market. And so if you're sitting there as a broker and you're like, I need to look at other options, it's very, very costly to go and start a teamerage division, right? And so the cost to go and figure out the lead sources and the proper ROI on the leads, to go hire the admin staff to bring in to be able to like service the teamerage, right? So it's really kind of learning a whole another set of traits. And I also think the relationship that you have with an agent on a teamerage versus just a brokerage is different. And here's what I mean by that. When you run a brokerage, you're providing a value and service for them. And so in some respects, it could be argued that that agent is actually like a client of yours if you're the broker, right? Whereas a team concept, it's very different. So with the team concept, they're a team member that you have to sometimes have difficult conversations. You have to hold them accountable. You have to make sure they're doing the activities that they're supposed to be doing. And so that dynamic of treating a client versus treating a team member, to me, feels very different. And I think that that's one of the big chasms between a broker just going and doing a brokerage versus doing a teamerage.
Hi, this is Tracey Velt, and we're here with Mark Adams, Vice President of Real Estate for HousingWire and RealTrends. And I want to talk to him a little bit about the brokerage rankings. So Mark, why don't you tell me a little bit about what our audience needs to know about the brokerage rankings? I know the submission portal is open and waiting for people to submit.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So first of all, thanks for having me, Tracey. The RealTrends brokerage rankings are now in their 35th year. And if you are a brokerage and in the calendar year 2022, you had over 500 transaction sides, excluding commercial, land, lot rentals, and outside referred business, we would love for you to submit to be featured on our rankings that will be released in March. If you're a brokerage with a national brand, your data will be submitted for you by the corporate office. But if you're an independent, including leading RE members, we'd like to have you submit your data directly to us via our portal on RealTrends.com. So the deadline to submit is going to be March 3rd. It's rapidly approaching. So make sure that you get over to RealTrends.com and submit your data today to be featured in the industry's trusted rankings program.
We are truly the trusted source, the oldest rankings program that's been around, and we do third-party verification. I think that's important for everyone to understand as well. So the big question, though, is when will the rankings be released?
Yeah, we are very much looking forward to the rankings being released starting on March 24th. That'll be the RealTrends 500, which is just the top 500 brokerages in the country as ranked by the sides that they've produced in calendar year 2022. The nation's best, which is all qualifying brokerages, will be released on March 29th. And you can head on over to RealTrends.com on the launch date to view the rankings, or you can grab the Friday edition of the Wall Street Journal to see the top brokerages in the country featured in their magazine.
Thanks so much, Mark, for letting everyone know. And brokers, make sure you get your submissions in by March 3rd.
Thanks, Tracey.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And what do you feel like really makes a successful teamerage? Like, what's in it for the agent on that type of model?
So I know that I've seen this teamerage conversation kind of thrown about in a lot of different conversations. And it's almost coming to the point where it's a lot like teams and there's like just a bunch of different models out there. But what I would say is to have a successful teamerage, I think there's a couple key components that you have. You have to recruit agents in, obviously. You have to have lead gen levers, and it's not just one lever, right? You have to have multiple different lead gen levers. Um, and then you have to have the transaction coordination and listing coordination for your agents that are in that teamerage. And then on top of that, you have to also have training and coaching to get them successful, right? Like you have to do all of these things. If you just do one, right? If you just do leads or if you just do training, well, the reality is agents can go get that on their own, right? They can go hire a coach. They can go buy leads on their own. What they're looking for is an all-inclusive package that gets them everything that they're actually looking for. And so I think that that's kind of the benefit of a teamerage. I think for the agent, the benefit is it's a one-stop shop that you get everything. I think the other benefit is there's a lot of agents, and I think there's kind of this new breed of agents out there that really just they want their own identity, right? They're hesitant to join a team because they don't want to give up their identity to the rainmaker, right? They want to start building something of their own. I think the teamerage concept, if it's done at a high level, will be able to do that. It's going to give them the support that they need and let them keep their identity at the same time.
Yeah, it's amazing to me. I've been in reporting on real estate for 30 years or so. And the concept of a team, I remember when it was first just kind of coming around, you had partnerships with agents and things like that. And it's evolved so much that it's confusing. Like some teams have their own mortgage company, their own mortgage arm. They have their own title arm. It's amazing how much that model has evolved, in the past even 15 years, honestly.
It has evolved, and yet when you kind of zoom back out, like it still all kind of looks the same, right? Like go back to that 20 years ago when I was sitting in that office and I was getting those services. You can call it a brokerage, or you can call it a team, or you can call it a teamerage. At the same, like I was getting the same services, right? And so it's just a matter of what as a brokerage, what do you want to be known for? What's your model? And then the team concept too, right? Because I've seen a lot of teams that are more what I would call globs or groups than what they are as actual teams, right? And so there's just a lot of different variety out there right now, and it's going to be an interesting next 12 to 24 months to see how kind of all this pans out and which models stand the test of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And how have you seen maybe the agent mentality or business acumen change over the past couple of years or even 5 years? And like, what are some trends you're seeing as it relates to teams?
So I've seen over the last probably 2 to 3 years that teams have really gotten into what I would call the body count business, where they are just teams before used to be 3, 4, 5, 6 people, and now you're seeing these teams that are 40, 50, 60 people deep. And I think that I think that that's going to change. I think that they were more or less in the brokerage business, and now that we're contracting and there's going to be probably less agent count in the next 6 months, I would imagine. You're going to see that kind of change, and teams really have to focus in on that bottom line and accountability around leads that they're giving out. So I see that changing. So just teams in general shrinking over time. I also think that and you've seen this, Tracey, that like you're seeing smaller teams join bigger teams. And I think there's a lot of different reasons around that. I'm sure you have a take on that, but what I have seen is for these smaller teams to like compete, if you will, or add the value that they need for their clients, they need more benefits, marketing, technology, whatever the case. I'm sure you've seen that trend too.
Yeah, the other, even brokerages are doing a lot of walkovers now, which are, teamerage models. A lot of times they're a broker who's a producing broker with maybe like 3 or 4 agents joining in this market, joining another larger brokerage. And I know that I believe, and I might have this wrong, but I know that Steve Murray does a ton of team valuations. He does value a lot of teams, and he can give some great advice on what makes a team valuable. And having one person as rainmaker does not. so that
I've heard him talk about that. The more business that rainmaker is doing, like literally the number goes down as far as evaluation goes.
yeah, absolutely. And I believe that he worked on an M&A transaction with a team that a brokerage did, acquired a team. I could be wrong on that. He said it in passing, and I might have gotten that wrong. I know they hadn't done any of those up till maybe recently, but it does seem that is becoming a little bit of a trend, like you said. How does that? Let's talk about team value. Like, what, in your opinion, makes a team more valuable for the future? Basically, everyone wants to build a business that has value for when they're retiring or when they're leaving the business.
So going back to that point that you had mentioned about the mergers and acquisitions of a team by a brokerage, and I think that's interesting that you brought that up, because what I have seen is that brokerages are looking at one of 3 options when they're talking about teamerage. They're saying, can we start our own? Can we partner with someone like Powered by Impact? Or can we go and buy someone's team, right? And so that may be where Steve was going with that, was brokerages to build out their teamerage division. An easy solution for them, maybe costly, but easy, is to go buy a team and then bring them in-house, use their services, and being able to set it up that way.
What are some other trends you're seeing around teams? I know with brokerages, this has been long discussed that, you either have to be super specialized or you have to, be big in order to be profitable and kind of reach that peak profitability and add affiliated services on that side. So what are you seeing as far as teams within that respect?
Where I'm seeing teams really kind of add value and kind of do something a little bit different is they're starting to add more benefits to their employees and to their agents, right? And so, it used to be unheard of that independent contractors on a team could actually get healthcare benefits, right? And so I've seen that has been something that has either made it more attractive for them to bring people on or retain their people. I also seen that some of the bigger teams are also starting to do like wealth building opportunities where, hey, invest in this commercial property with me, or invest in this private money lending. And so those are where I think some of the bigger kind of more forward thinking teams are kind of going, is how can we build in really retention factors into our team so we have that longevity and we don't have agents coming off every 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, and you had mentioned what agents are willing to pay for. So how has that changed, and what have you seen in that respect?
So we've definitely seen, I see it from the brokerage side and I see it from the team side. And I see agents, look at the coaching industry, Tracey, in the real estate field. Like, it's a massive industry inside of another industry. And so agents are really willing to pay for, they're willing to pay for that. I also see a lot of our single agents being willing to pay for transaction coordination and listing coordination, right? Someone to handle the paperwork side that communicates with the brokerage and just makes their life easy and allows them to really focus on the stuff that makes them money. So I know that they're willing to pay for that. And then it's very weird, but they are willing to pay for space. I can't tell you how many brokerages that they're like, the agents are actually just going out and getting small office space for themselves, right? And I think, Yeah. Like on my way to work, where my main office is, there is uh 4 brokerages, and one of them's like a big brokerage, but the other, including mine, that there's 2 that are just like single agents that went and got office space because they need a place to work out of, right? And they want their own space. And so it's interesting, right? Like I think a single agent may not see that as much, but as you start to build a team and you have a staff, you need a place for them to go. And so they're investing in that stuff too.
Yeah, that is really interesting. And obviously that will diminish profitability some because office space is what teams usually save on, especially if they're under a broker who is paying for that office space. So yeah, that's interesting.
But and then the other obvious thing is that agents are willing to pay for leads, right? I mean, the last stat I saw was KW agents in the last 12 months paid 140 million to Zillow, just to Zillow, right? And so that's a lot of money. And so that's what they're valuing. And that's where I think this teamerage conversation comes back into play, is they're willing to pay for the leads if you can bring them the clients, right? And so I think that's where the teamerage conversation comes back into play.
This is kind of off the subject of teams, but you've been through a lot of different markets, and things are slowing. Agents are uncertain. What advice do you have for them to kind of have the mindset of growth and opportunity and positiveness in this market? Because there is a lot of opportunity in a market like this.
Yeah, there is. I think that there's a lot of fear right now, and I think that there's a lot of agents that have gotten in the business and they've not seen anything like this, right? And I think when it boils all down, what I have been telling my team members, what I've been telling my people at my brokerages, it really boils down to 2 things, which is the message and the math, is what I've been telling them. Which the message is, you're going to need to learn new conversation tracks with your buyers and your sellers, right? Before you go into a listing appointment and you would say, what price do you want to list it at, Mr. or Mrs. Seller? And you list it and it sells for probably more than that. Now you actually need to figure out how to do a market analysis at a high level. You need to understand the conversation that you need to have with them when it's been 14 days and their house hasn't sold. So just understanding the message and working on your skill there. Then the other part of that is the math, right? Like you're going to have more conversations. You're going to have a bigger database. You're going to have to do that just to have the same amount of business that you had, right? Like you're going to have to double down and do that. If you do those 2 things, if you update your skills and you do the math and you figure out how many conversations you need, it's going to be fine for those people.
Okay, great. My last question is just what's next for you, your team, for Powered by Impact?
So we've got a lot of traction around Powered by Impact. I think with the current state of the real estate market and what brokers are feeling, they're looking for a solution on how to have more profit. And so we're growing really fast with Powered by Impact. We're in 16 locations. We're looking to just kind of create a win-win for brokerages and be able to provide that solution for them.
Okay, great. Well, Jose, thanks for sharing with our audience on RealTrending, and congratulations on all of the success you've had in the past couple of years since we talked last, when you were a game changer.
Thanks, Tracey.